These are the 7 levels of the Omnitrix.
Level 1. The Sketch.
The Sketch is an Omnitrix that isn't quite like the one that we got in Classic. However, it is one of the most fresh and new ideas from the mind of Azimuth. The perfect watch that falls into this category is the Omnitrix. Debuting in the episode The Transmogrification of Eunice, this watch can only store one DNA sample as its means of transformation. It has a design that strongly resembles the core of the Omnitrix, with no faceplate or watch dial to display different selectable DNA samples. Currently, it only stores a singular human DNA sample, which is now known as Eunice. She has actually been a combination of human and Anonite DNA, and she has this weird ability to absorb DNA and use their special abilities. The sentient DNA shifter has absorbed many things such as arachnochimp DNA, rabbits, snakes, and even bears, giving her remarkable powers, but only for a short period of time, and only one ability at a time per absorption. This is the Omnitrix in its infancy, and we can see this plainly in even the design, as it is just an Omnitrix core. However, the way it matures into becoming a living, breathing person, who has the hots for Ben by the way, is quite interesting. It only gets better though once this core gets slotted into a watch wristband, giving us
Level 2. The Prototype.
This is the prototype watch that we got in a Classic series. Debuting in the episode And Then There Were 10, this Omnitrix is the first design that made its way to Earth. Originally intended for Max Tennyson, this watch came with a starting playlist of 10 aliens. However, ended up containing about 23 or 24 by the end of Ben's first 2 years of usage. This Omnitrix has a numerous amount of functions unlike the previous versions of the watch. It came with a function that would revert the user after a set amount of time back to their original form, whether it be human or otherwise, and it also came with a function to scan and unlock new DNA that the watch has not come in contact with. Along with that, it did come with a major defect, which was housing a living sample of an ectoneurite, which ended up being a huge problem for Ben Tennyson. Speaking of defects and problems, we even got an entire movie centered around the watch's self-destruct function, which was activated accidentally by a DNA shifter device created by Dr. Animo. The watch itself evolves further into the future, having grown in size and containing a gauntlet-like glove on the arm of the user. We see this in the episode Ben 10,000 and Ken 10. This version of the matured Omnitrix now negates the function of staying in a single alien form at a time, and also the timeout function. It now has access to mental transformation without even touching the watch, known as Master Control. This is where a bigger playlist of the Omnitrix even comes out, as a multitude of aliens have been unlocked here. But it still rendered transformations in a different way from watches to come, where it's maintained the white Omnitrix symbol on aliens, placing the symbol at various locations on each transformation, and it's also created the black and white blended aesthetic of clothing onto each transformation. The Ben 10,000 Omnitrix does actually have another new feature that most don't know about, which is the nanotech enhancements.
Nanomachines, son.
These have been added in the strengthening of these aliens, making them better for combat. However, it gets beaten by another version of the same prototype, which is
Level 3. The Augmentation.
This Omnitrix is still a version of the prototype watch, with 2 major transformations and changes for the aliens, only existing in the reboot universe. We first have the Omni Enhanced, which is a pseudo-fusion of full mini DNA or shock rock DNA with the main playlist of aliens, giving us all new electrified aliens with new abilities centered around shock rock's electrokinesis. A prime example would be Grey Matter, now gaining a massive rock exoskeleton along with electrokinetic arms, sort of like a mechanical transformation but out of electricity and rocks. These are all abilities centered around enhancing combat and making Ben a stronger fighter, plus toy sales.
Oh yeah! Accelerate with lights!
This doesn't stop here though, as it actually had real negative side effects, as it ended up being a conduit for the full mini alien race to invade Earth, which wasn't so good. However, after that function disappeared from the Omnitrix, Ben unlocked one that was fully intended for the user, which was the Omni Kicks mode. Being only accessible from the Omnitrix key, this mode gives the user new armors at the cost of their time in alien form. Each of these armors would significantly enhance these aliens in their abilities and would round out their weaknesses in their combat styles. Prime example would be giving Forearms and Humongosaur projectile abilities, or increasing the ability of Cannonbolt to generate kinetic energy, which would increase his damage output. These transformations also compound further into being the Omni-Naut forms, which are the most suitable forms for space travel, not only in alien form but in human form as well. This mode is actually the one thing to close the gap on the Omnitrix, which is the watch that Kevin 11 has. However, only the Omnitrix mode was a true upgrade for the Omnitrix. Well, until we see
Level 4. The updated.
This is the recalibration of the Omnitrix that we only got our first look at in the episode Ben 10 Returns at the start of Alien Force. This was an update that changed and warped the classic Omnitrix into a sleeker and slimmer design that transformed many things from the watch that we knew prior. Firstly, we got a fresh new aesthetic, a thinner wristband, and a different user interface where instead of pushing the button and turning the dial and then pushing it back down again for transformation, the Alien Force Omnitrix worked by pushing the two side buttons, having the dial come up, and a new holographic display feature that would show the aliens. Once that is pushed down, the transformation sequence would occur. However, before we get into that, I must also note that this playlist has now moved from 24 aliens to now being a brand new 10 aliens. Now this transformation sequence does something the classic Omnitrix never did, which is an instantaneous memory download or update into the user. Now this isn't completely confirmed canon, but based on how the classic Omnitrix operated with new aliens versus the Alien Force watch, we can confidently deduce this because of two major things. You see, Ben always screams the name of his aliens, even when he's transforming into them for the very first time.
Brainstorm!
And the way Ben displays his immediate knack of understanding of these aliens' abilities within a matter of seconds is what informs this theory of the complete download of the alien abilities upon transformations. A few new things that come with this watch though, besides the new user interface, are new, more powerful and diverse aliens. Some of them are theorized to be fusion abilities of previous aliens, Big Chill being the combination of Ghost Freak and Arctiquana, and Swampfire being the combination of Heat Blast and Wildvine. But it doesn't stop there, as the new Omnitrix comes with more user-friendly things that shield the user from being hacked. Firstly are the new codes that Ben has gotten access to through Azimuth that have not only been able to lock the users out of accessing the watch like what it did to Vilgax, but has also been able to lock users out of transformations such as Alien X. This has also been able to help Ben remove the watch within a moment's notice, and also set the watch to self-destruct. Final new setting that I believe the watch does come with that I've never seen in the prototype is the failsafe sequence that automatically keeps Ben alive. A prime example of this is when Ben fought in the episode Vengeance of Vilgax, and he died while being in the transformation Chroma Stone. He was subsequently revived as a Petrosapien. I still do think that Chroma Stone being the key to reviving the Petrosapien planet does play a bigger role in this, but I still think the Omnitrix function played a huge part in that. This watch is a near perfected version of the Omnitrix. Well, until it went kaput and we needed a replacement.
Level 5. The Gladiator.
This version of the Omnitrix was quite the collaborative product between Azimuth and his protege Albedo. Albedo created his own model of what he wanted the watch to do, which was create aliens that were the best for fighting. You see, it has a function that allows aliens to undergo a rapid evolutionary cycle that has them come out at the end as the species that are primed for combat. An ultimate alien, if you'd like to call it that. We got our first look at the idea of going ultimate in the episode The Final Battle, where Humongosaur collects his 15th Alien Force L and gets dog walked in a matter of seconds, not even getting to lay a finger on Albedo in his ultimate Humongosaur form. This watch is the direct, corrupt display of strength and raw power, following through on the philosophy of might makes right. It has only given us about 8 unique ultimate aliens from Ben's time with the watch, and each of them were a true terror to behold. Well, except Wildmont, that alien was an epic waste of time.
Shut up!
This version of the Omnitrix did come with a few new functions, which included a scan function that could be done remotely instead of by contact, similarly to the recalibrated watch, which responded to codes, a deactivation function that could be used by Azimuth to fix the watch, and it came with an alien sentience mode, sort of like the Chakitrix in a sense, that could create real live ultimates. I mean, this was really a byproduct of just bad design by Albedo, and they actually threatened Ben's life and almost killed him. Ben ended up losing the Ultimatrix at the end of the show and received something completely new.
Level 6. The Perfected.
This Omnitrix is the watch that led the series of Omniverse. This perfected Omnitrix had a complete overhaul of everything that we had known before. Firstly, no ultimates. Secondly, having access to every transformation up until this very moment. And thirdly, a plethora of new aliens came into the watch. along with a final brand new user interface, which was an odd circular holographic function that would enable the user to access the aliens by sliding their fingers over the faceplate and then pushing down on the Omnitrix core once they've selected what they want. This watch does also compound on previous functions, like having an even more remote scan function that can collect DNA once the user is relatively close to the new catalog. It also has functions like the randomizer function, which forces Ben to shift between alien transformations randomly, and an improved version of the failsafe function that will cycle through the entire catalog rapidly in order to keep the subject alive. This can happen within a fraction of a second, as it did when Ben tried to face tank the Big Bang. This version of the Omnitrix is literally perfect in every way, as it also compounds on a little known factor of the watch, which is how it creates prime versions of every species. Take for example Kicking Hawk, which was created from this chicken guy, which moved him from being an average Joe Schmo villain into being Ben's best hand-to-hand combat alien. This version of the Omnitrix is a real marvel. However, Ben himself was never truly satisfied, and in the future he ended up having to do this.
Level 7. The Hack.
The Omnitrix is a Ben 10,000 artificial creation, which compounds even more on the completed version of the Omnitrix. It does something very unique, which is to use a gimmick or a principle from the episode Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray to create new transformations, or what we would know them as fusions, creating various fusions like Upgrade, Big Chuck, and Atomic X, which is a fusion of a Celestial Sapien and Atomics. This watch is primed for combat and combat versatility, as the Omnitrix not only has endless aliens but now has endless combinations. This is only even more perpetuated by the fact that Ben has full access to master control for this device, only needing to think of the combinations and press the two gauntlets together. A pretty unknown fact though is that each Omnitrix gauntlet can select a single alien and give Ben an unfused transformation, but Ben 10,000 literally never uses that. A major functional issue that does come into play with this watch is that it can be knocked out of commission by solar EMPs, which is quite interesting since it's the first time I've ever seen an Omnitrix be deactivated by something that isn't a timeout or a forced reversion. But there's another cool Omnitrix that is about as canon as Grandpa Max with the watch, and this is the Omnitrix Delta. I'm pretty sure anyone would want to find out how that one works.